Hey guys, I'm Ben. When we look at death metal, we've really been blessed over the years to have so many vibrant, interesting, and unique scenes that have popped up all over the world. Each one of them bringing their own kind of dark, mystical magic to this genre that we love. Of course, you've got your Polish scene and your Swedish scene and your Florida scene and your New York scene, your Brazil scene. It goes on and on and on, right? Each one of them has their own distinct flavor, the Swedish scene with its buzzsaw guitars, the Finnish scene with its sort of unhinged, chaotic impenetrability in a way. I don't know, how would you define the Finnish scene? The Florida scene, of course, with that much more sort of clean, direct approach of the Morrisound recordings. And, each scene has their own defining elements that would, over time, would become, generic and copied. But when they were new, they were very exciting, very compelling, and on the cutting edge. One scene that I think is really, really interesting to look at and popped up pretty early was the Czech scene from Czechia, or the Czech Republic. From that scene, they seemed to develop a really unique approach to death metal. And that's kind of what I want to just highlight, some of the bands that came out of that scene that mean a lot to me, and that I think anybody out there who has a curiosity about music and has an open mind and is prepared to, or is seeking out music that is perhaps challenging or perhaps outside of the box that you're used to, then all of the bands I'm going to talk about today will scratch that itch for you. So I'll start off with Appalling Spawn. This is one of the earliest acts from this niche. They were formed in 1993 in Prague. They played like a kind of brutal progressive death metal and grindcore hybrid, very heavy, very pulverizing. They're sort of combining, your really heavy death metal with dissonant technical riffing and unusual sort of melodic passages as well, really approaching melody from a very unique way, and in a way that, completely different from how your standard melodic death metal approaches melody. Far more angular and unusual and twisted, but also equally emotive, I think. And for me, I find it even more emotive. I find that, for me personally, the melodic death metal stuff it sounds pretty cheesy to me. It sounds like very formulaic. All the bands basically are doing the same kind of melodies. This is not like that at all, okay? Very heavy though, and I would recommend checking out they only have two things that I know of anyway, and that's the 1996 demo called Bestial, Mystical, and Spiritual. Have a listen. The 1998, I think, album from them, which was called Freedom, Hope, and Fury, The Second Spawn. Check that out. These guys are, or these recordings, I should say, are really key early Czech experimental extreme metal recordings, and definitely important, one of the most important from that genre, so definitely check those out. Appalling Spawn would ultimately evolve and become the band that was really the catalyst for me doing this video, because I love them so very much, and I love their only album so very much. So I was going to make a video just about them and just about this album, but then when I thought about it, one of the things that was making me want to talk about them was my perception of them as being so unique. But then when I thought about it even more, I realized, well, they do fit into this scene, and they're not, the finished product is uniquely the best version, I think, of that scene. But I don't think they're totally unique in their approach, in the sense of it being experimental and wild and crazy and interesting. And of course, who am I talking about? I'm talking about Lycathia Aflame. This is perhaps the most iconic experimental Czech death metal project. It was born out of the Appalling Spawn's members around 1999, as I mentioned before. And they really pushed a technical, very progressive and atmospheric death metal that, again, was really blending that real brutality, like, imagine, if you haven't heard it, imagine sort of like the level of heaviness of, like, say, Nile or Cryptopsy, perhaps. And those are bands I've actually heard people compare them with, although I don't think they're really comparable musically. Complex playing is, off the scale, but very musical as well. They're using a lot of exotic sort of melodies and a lot of mood shifts, and it's very progressive in its structure. They have a really unique way of approaching harmony and melody. Again, like Appalling Spawn, but this time it's way more advanced. It's way more, I guess if you're comparing Appalling Spawn to Lycathia Aflame, then Lycathia Aflame is less heavy because there's more of those external elements that have been brought into the music. But it's so seamless, and they capture the emotion so well of what they're trying to portray. Their approach to harmony is really, really interesting. It's like they're sort of bringing in things in the way they approach harmony in death metal is really unique. I can't think of any other death metal bands before them. There's been plenty of bands that have come that have copied this scene specifically and have, done the avant-garde and dissonant thing and pushed it even more into more extreme territory. But I think, as always with all genres, once a genre gets fully established and becomes generic. You know, there are generic tropes that people want to reenact or copy in their music. That cutting edge, spontaneous excitement is kind of not there for me as much anymore. I'm not saying I can't enjoy some of that stuff, and I do, but for me, like with a lot of the other forms of metal that I like classic death, just straight death metal or heavy metal, classic heavy metal, I'm always going to prefer the bands that were there at the cutting edge because there's a certain freshness, rawness, uniqueness, really there's an excitement there of being on the edge, and you really get this, really comes across on this album, like a Flame. There is really nothing like it. It's very, very cool. When it starts off with this like Egyptian, kind of harmonic minor thing, and it's. I remember when I first heard it, I thought, oh, okay, it's like a Nile clone, but actually, that kind of thing is much less. That's not really. They're not really doing the Middle Eastern thing that much. They do a little bit of it, but mostly it's this other sort of more almost gothic sounding, almost new wave, and bringing in these just external elements into it, into their approach to harmony. Anyway, it's very cool. Extremely, it is fucking heavy. So prepare yourself. If you're a lightweight. I'm sure if you're watching this though and you're into death metal, you'll have no problems with it. So another band that is far less known, but is also one of the longest running Czech avant-garde extreme metal acts, that is T.O.O.H, which is the most annoying band name ever, I think. It's like, because like when you search for it and stuff like that, you have to spell it the way it is, otherwise shit doesn't come up. Or I found that, I don't know, you have to spell it like exclamation point, capital T dot, capital O dot, capital O dot, capital H dot, exclamation point. And that's actually short for the obliteration of humanity. Anyway, they're often described as progressive death metal with grindcore and avant-garde tendencies, and I think that's pretty good. It's absolutely chaotic, total experimental arrangement, weirdness, and intense. It's very intense. I think it's not quite as heavy as Appalling Spawn or Lakithia or Flame, perhaps. I don't know. Maybe I'm just desensitized or something. It's still fucking heavy, though. I mean, it's it's not the kind of music you're going to put on when grandma comes around for a visit. But it's very out there. There's a few albums that they've done several albums. I don't have all their albums. The albums that I have are from Higher Will. Here's a bit of that. The other one is, and by the way, I think from Higher Will is they also released a Polish version, a Czech version with Czech lyrics, and this version from Higher Will is with English lyrics, and they're obviously two different vocal tracks, recorded differently, so they are slightly different. But the one that I have is the English version, and the other one, I think it was the next one. I don't know how you're supposed to say the name. I think it's like Pod Vlado Biche or something. I don't know. Sorry about that. I have no idea how to speak Czech. But that's the one I discovered first, and it's just awesome. Insanity. Have a listen to that. Next one that they did was Order and Punishment. Not sure what year that was. I think maybe 2005. So I think the first one was 1999 or thereabouts, and then the Pod Vladu one is from 2003. And I think it's actually two brothers who do it. I don't know that much about them exactly, but anyway, they did Order and Punishment in 2005, and I think after that they took like a long hiatus, and they might have like done some stuff since then, but I kind of have been out of the loop with that. There's probably some I think I heard that they came back, so there might be some amazing shit that I haven't heard yet. But anyway, it's very, very cool. They really like blending like misanthropic themes, and it's constant genre busting. A lot of this is a sort of, I guess, would become a cliche of that scene. Of course, at the time, it was very much a new thing to do that. And, well, especially within death metal anyway. So very, very cool. And I highly recommend it. Sorry, I was drifting off for a second there. Another band that started in 1993, who I believe have released a album a few years back, that made a comeback, but I'm more familiar with their first album, and that's Contrastic. Contrastic are a long-lived Czech band playing like weird experimental grind death kind of style, often incorporating abstract rhythmic and thematic elements. They really fly under the radar, but are definitely very respected in the scene, for sort of the same kind of reasons as the others, refusing to absorb those straight generic tropes of death metal or grindcore. The album that I would check out is the self-titled one. It's just called Contrastic. Original artwork is kind of cool. It's like a picture of I think it's like the head of the Little Mermaid, like from a coloring book, and it's been colored in. Just that, no words or anything like that. So and I think that represents like the playful nature of this stuff. So, a friend of mine described this stuff as zany, and I can see that, like, that people see it that way, because there is obviously a level of humor involved in all of this music. And I think in general, like, people forget that there's a level of humor in all of death metal, if you really think about it. I mean, yeah, it's serious to a degree, but I mean, come on, I think we all know it's like there's something funny about death metal as well, you know. And these kind of bands explore that. They explore it's not that the music itself is funny. It's that there's an absurdity to the extremity of it, you know, and that's kind of funny. If you have a sense of humor, if you're just like cavalt fucking serious, you know, death metal, Satan, you know, then maybe not for you. But if you have a sense of humor running through your fucking head, then I think you can appreciate it. And these bands, you know, kind of in the same way that like bands like, you know, Mr. Bungle would bring in a lot of humor and sort of craziness to sort of, you know, it would be so extreme and out there that it would make you laugh. Sometimes it's a little bit like that. So there, I guess there is a bit of the zaniness there, but there's also such awesome use of melody contrasting with extreme grind and death metal and pummeling, you know, attack. So I actually find that juxtaposition works really well to give you a sort of wide range of emotions, more so than you might get from just straight death metal, you know? Anyway, definitely a really cool album. Definitely worth checking out. Contrastic, self-titled album. Another band from that scene that is a little bit more, I guess, familiar to the tech death sound would be Duobetic Homunculus, formed around 2005. These guys actually feature members or ex-members of T.O.O.H, who I mentioned before. And they come from a few other experimental underground outfits. They play, like I said, it's more closer to what you would expect from technical death metal, but it is still avant-garde. It's still they still bring in all this sort of weirdness. There's sort of like mechanistic and abstract concepts all through the music. It's been described as like machine shop metal, because it's like kind of got this industrial angular vibe to it. But unlike a lot of modern tech death, which sounds super clean and super overproduced, or I know some people some people cringe about calling things overproduced, but I think if everything is so perfect that you can't hear any humanity left in it, then yeah, I think it's overproduced, and that's certainly not the case with these guys. Especially the thing that I love most from them is actually their first demo. I don't know if it's their first demo. It's the demo that they did before their full length album, which for the life of me I can't remember what it's called. But the demo is got it's another name that like I'm gonna fuck up here, but it's like I think it's like Casti a machine machinism. What is it? A machine machinisme Stroju or something. Stroju. Anyway, I don't know. Look up on Metal Archives the band Duobetic Homunculus, and you'll see it there. And you'll see also the full-length album. Here's a little bit from the demo. Anyway, there are a few other bands in there that I know about, but I haven't really heard. Like Tristiva Fractura is another one, but I don't really know their music. And there's of course other sort of Czech bands who are doing progressive things and stuff, but it's not really so much it's not so insane, like Forgotten Silence. And then you got like Krabatho, which is like a death metal band, more traditional, but also very influential. But I would say that the Czech scene has several really distinctive characteristics. Genre bending. These bands rarely stick to pure death metal. Instead, they mix in prog and grind, or if they're more grind, they'll mix in the death metal. They bring in technical elements, they bring in avant-garde elements, they bring in elements from completely outside of the genre of metal itself. They're really a DIY culture as well, like very underground. Many of these acts are totally independent. They were releasing albums themselves, self-released, or on very small indie labels, and they were really thriving in their own local scenes and fests like Obscene Extreme. There's a lot of cross-pollination as well. Members often appear in multiple projects like Two, Geobotic, Homunculus, Tristiva Fractura. They're all sort of interlinked with each other, and the community in general is really interlinked and showing a sort of tightness there and camaraderie. A really unique scene, definitely worth exploring if you have more of an open mind to sort of the more bizarre end. For me personally, when I look at how, the evolution of music, I sort of feel like in the last 20 years or so, we've really stagnated. Most of the newer forms of metal or any kind of genre are just hybrids of other genres which are equally played out. So death metal brings in all the is it has gone well. Metal in general has gone in a whole bunch of different directions, all of which, like especially the newest kind of stuff, I'm not interested in it because it's bringing in other genres which are also played out. When you look back at like when metal was evolving and it would sort of bring in other elements, they were always, each element that was coming in was also cutting edge. It was also very new. So like when thrash became developed into technical thrash, like that was all very new. They were bringing in that, and then technical thrash merged with death metal, and you got tech death, and that was all kind of happening within the same few years. It was all happening very quickly and around the same period of time. And when you look at each sort of major sort of hybrid evolution like that, the best stuff is happening right there where it's at the cutting edge. I think this scene what really opened up a new cutting edge for progressive death metal, a new approach to it, and an approach that I feel like I kind of wish had been explored a little bit more. I feel like a lot of the bands that have carried on the or at least they think they're carrying on the legacy of this scene tend to be too focused maybe on dissonance, too focused on the tropes themselves rather than what these bands were able to accomplish, which was to create a very strong artistic statement using all these disparate elements and doing it in a way that was totally new. And that's what was exciting about it. Anyway, I highly recommend you go and check it out. If you don't have much time and you don't know where to start, I would definitely start with the best one, Lycathia Aflame. Their album Elvenephros is an absolute masterpiece. You cannot go wrong with that one. So go check it out. Appalling Spawns, Freedom, Hope, and Fury, if you like it a bit heavier. Two, I would say either the Podvlod Biche one, the one I can't pronounce. It's kind of got this homemade, painting, weird abstract, mostly yellow-looking painting on the cover. So that's the one to look out for. Or maybe Order and Punishment is also a really good one. And the Contrastica The Contrastic, sorry, is just check out the debut album. It's really really good. But yeah, just that's kind of the order I would probably approach it. But you really can't go wrong with any of these albums. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. Stay metal, and I'll see you next time.